I don't want to talk about potential coaching changes for the rest of the season. So let's get out of the way now. I don't think Eli Drinkwitz is going anywhere.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And speaking of basketball, can you believe the Tigers actually have a real game tonight, 6 o'clock at Howard? Dennis Gates and his team opens up the season for real this time, so I got plenty of hoops to talk about a little later in the show. And really this Eli Drinkwitz thing, it kind of comes down to this hypothetical question to me. Would you rather have Gene Chizik's career or would you rather have Mike Gundy's career? So I want to break down Drinkwitz and his position in college football and at Missouri from as many angles as I can, and hopefully we'll just move on from this topic for the rest of the regular season. But you know what? Before I start, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. So here's the thing. I'm just going to plant my flag here, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So be it. I absolutely believe this. I think Eli Drinkwitz is going to stick around Missouri, at least at this time. I'm not going to predict 5, 10, 20 years from now. But for now, I think Eli is going to stay here, and simply for, a lot of different reasons. As I've said before, I think Eli has basically got everything he wants here. He is sitting on top of the perch at the University of Missouri as the most powerful guy in the entire university system for all intents and purposes. And navigating his way to that position probably wasn't the easiest thing in the world. And not only that, navigating the NIL landscape at Missouri to get it to a point where, Missouri has been one of the biggest NIL players in football and men's basketball for the last few cycles here. I think all of those things, getting to the top of the perch at Florida, at LSU, at Auburn, at Penn State, I would say those are the big four main jobs you would be tempted by if you were Eli Drinkwitz or anybody in his position, I would think. But I think all of those jobs have their own challenges, and frankly, I just don't know that the risk is worth the reward. Also, I think the quarterback position here at Missouri is going to factor in these last several weeks here. I really think Matt Zollers, the true freshman here, is being thrown into the fire unexpectedly here after Bo Prabula, and Sam Horn's previous injury too, by the way. I think his play is going to matter on several different levels. First of all, if Zollers plays well down the stretch here to the point where, it looks like he should be the starter in 2026, I would think that has to solidify Drinkwitz standing with Missouri. Quite honestly, as I've broken down several times on this program, in the portal, Drinkwitz and Missouri have been oh so close to just absolutely nailing that position, barely missing out on Jaden Daniels. This previous cycle, Fernando Mendoza, Missouri was very close there as well. So if you're Missouri, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, is the idea that, I'm certainly, if he takes another job, let's say he goes to Florida, there's no guarantee that DJ Lagway, for example, is still going to be around, or even, I don't even know what Eli Drinkwitz thinks of DJ Lagway as a player, quite honestly. I would imagine he'd want to coach him if he were going to Florida, but the point here is that there's a lot of total unknowns here if you leave Missouri that goes well beyond just, the off-the-field stuff. Obviously, on the field, any coaching change in the portal environment, there's going to be massive movement both ways, I think. So the point here is that if Zollers plays well, I've got to think if you're Eli Drinkwitz, you're going, hey, I may have my quarterback here. Why do I want to leave somewhere and try to find another one again? What can be a bit of a crapshoot even in the transfer portal? You'd think it'd be a higher batting average than high school recruiting, certainly, but obviously it's far from an exact science, even in the college transfer portal. Also, what's interesting, too, is Zollers' play almost certainly is going to affect Bo Prabula's status on the team. And by the way, potentially Sam Horn as well in 2026. Again, say Zollers plays so well that he looks like a pretty obvious decision to start him next year in 2026. Well, if that happens, what if Prabula decides to enter the portal again? What if Sam Horn decides, hey, it's baseball time for me. This football thing's been great, but time to concentrate on the mound where my professional future probably is. Those would both be understandable decisions. But in that scenario, that means it's Matt Zollers and true freshman Gavin Sidwar would be your only scholarship quarterbacks on the roster next season. In that situation, I've got to think a Drew Pine-like backup type player, a veteran type backup player in the portal would be in the cards. By the way, while I'm thinking of this, it is pronounced Matt Zollers, by the way. I heard in the Vanderbilt game, it seemed like the preferred pronunciation by the SEC network or the ESPN, ABC announcers, the Disney guys, as it were, was Zollers. I've thought it was Zollers this entire time, so I'm going to stick with that until somebody corrects me on that one. But I will say this. For me, if I'm Eli Drinkwitz, obviously as competitive a person as he is, he wants to win it all. He wants to win the SEC. He wants to win the national championship. That's totally understandable. But my hypothetical scenario that I threw out there, I was trying to make a bit of a point here because obviously this isn't a realistic scenario. This is a hypothetical scenario. Would you rather have Gene Chizik's career or would you rather have Mike Gundy's career? Now, both of these guys ended up getting fired. The difference is, even though Gene Chizik won the 2010 national championship in his second year at Auburn with Cam Newton, well, by his fourth year, he was gone. He was fired. That's the level of patience Auburn fans had with Gene Chizik. Whereas Mike Gundy down at Oklahoma State, obviously things have gone terribly awry for the Cowboys this season, and it probably was the right move, I would say, at this point to move on from Gundy. But remember Mike's famous line in his speech from years ago when he said, hey, come at me. I'm a man. I'm 40. Well, remember when he was 40? Well, Mike Gundy is now 58 years old. He nearly made it to 60 down in Stillwater. Gene Chizik, on the other hand, coached Auburn for 4 years. Again, won a national championship, flags fly forever, but then he never was a head coach again. A couple of defensive coordinator stints at North Carolina, and that's it. This past weekend, Gene Chizik was calling the Arkansas-Mississippi State game this past weekend. Now, maybe Gene Chizik is perfectly content with his current lifestyle. I'm not trying to dunk on Gene Chizik. The point here is just career-wise. If I'm an accountant, if I'm your business manager and I'm going, you know what, that national championship was pretty nice, but boy, Mike Gundy, he sure was stacking those millions and millions and millions of dollars you get every year as a head coach. Currently, Eli Drinkwitz is making $10 million a year. If you can make that for another 18 to 20 years like Mike Gundy did, my goodness, you want to talk about some multi-generational wealth. That's what we're talking about here. Now, Gene Chizik, hey, you make it for another 3-4 years down in Auburn. I'm sure Drinkwitz, if he leaves for wherever, would be in for a pay bump. I don't know that it would be, Kirby Smart money making $15 million a year. And that's the other thing. Missouri already paying, I would say, if anything, above market value for Eli Drinkwitz at this point. So another factor there that I just don't think really points toward him moving anywhere. I'd also say I thought Michael Irvin, by the way, the former Dallas Cowboys wide receiver, of course, University of Miami super fan now currently, I thought he made a pretty good point about Micah Parsons that applied to Eli Drinkwitz as well. I want to talk about that coming up here on the program, and also got to get into Missouri basketball as well, which does tip off this evening in Washington, D.C. So plenty to get to here still on this edition of Locked On Mizzou. But you know what? If you're trying to get a last-minute ticket to, say, Howard tonight, maybe you're in the Washington, D.C. area, or more likely, you're probably looking for A&M tickets, right? Well, college football, it's just the best. But you know what? Sometimes getting tickets can be the worst. Well, that's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices, and the best part, no surprise fees as well. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, download Gametime today. So I was listening to Michael Irvin say something recently that I thought was interesting. He was talking about, and I think this applies to Eli Drinkwitz, is why I'm bringing it up. Well, he was talking about Micah Parsons, of course, the great edge rusher now for the Green Bay Packers. He was just traded this offseason after a contract dispute with the Cowboys. Well, now that Parsons is on the Packers, well, Irvin brought up something that I thought was interesting, and that's that, hey, I played my entire career with the Dallas Cowboys, obviously won 3 Super Bowls there. He just brought up that I haven't paid for a meal in Dallas ever, basically in the last 30 years. I mean, he's essentially a king in Dallas, beyond a celebrity, just a guy who is just beloved beyond those words, really, in the city of Dallas. Same thing with certainly Troy Aikman, certainly even Emmitt Smith, who played a season or two with Arizona at the very end of his career. But Michael Irvin's point was as well, you know what? Micah Parsons is definitely giving that up now by leaving Dallas after just a few seasons playing with Green Bay. His point is, I don't know that he's ever going to really belong to any fan base per se. And obviously there's a lot of fringe benefits to that. There's a lot of financial benefits to that. And the reason I think that applies to Eli Drinkwitz is because I don't think that all championships are created equally. For example, well, that's just sort of the expectation at places like Alabama, for example, and places that have won championships before. It sort of just becomes the expectation. And even if you win one, well, what have you done for me lately? I keep bringing up Gene Chizik because I think it applies. 2 years later, he's fired by Auburn. That's just simply something that's not going to happen at the University of Missouri. If Drinkwitz or any other coach were to bring a national championship or even an SEC championship for that matter to Missouri, the idea that that person would be forced out 2 years later is unfathomable. So I do think that, especially in a place like Columbia, I actually think the Dallas Cowboys corollary, if you will, the phenomenon that Michael Irvin, the playmaker, was describing there, I think it definitely applies more so in Columbia than it does in places like Florida and LSU and even Alabama. And once again, tonight, the official start of Missouri basketball's regular season, 6 p.m. tip-off, by the way, on Monday night on ESPN Plus, or I believe on ESPN Unlimited too, if you have that set up, or so it would seem. Don't take my word for that one, but I'm pretty sure if you have ESPN Plus, or perhaps even if you're a subscriber to ESPN SEC Network, maybe you can log into the ESPN app. I don't know. Try to figure it out early. This is not my area of expertise. But you know what? This November for Missouri basketball, definitely going to be a slow build here. Not exactly a lot of marquee matchups leading into early December against the Kansas Jayhawks. Missouri and Kansas renewing their rivalry once again. Notably, In the KenPom projections, these teams are pretty close right now. Missouri 28th in the projections, Kansas 21st. Of course, those projections can swing pretty wildly here in the month of November, depending on how these teams get out of the gates. But interestingly, the gap between Missouri, between Dennis Gates and Bill Self has closed seemingly enormously here over the past 3 seasons or so. Let's hope that that continues. One thing Dennis Gates noted here in the preseason that I thought was kind of interesting is that he said there's no one in our program currently from the portal that he had not recruited before, especially those guys like Javon Porter and Luke Northweather, as you might imagine. Well, those guys are from very, very much a local situation there. So, of course, Missouri would have recruited them. By the way, 3 kids within a 50-mile radius of campus. I know that Missouri basketball has had that in many, many years, certainly not in my memory as a fan. Javon Porter and Aaron Rowe both went to a Tolton High School here in Columbia, and Luke Northweather, a product of the Wardsville, Jeff City area, Blair Oaks High School, of course. So I don't know that Missouri has ever had that many local guys on one team. So just an interesting note there. By the way, the Tigers should hopefully have a pretty comfortable win here tonight. The last time Missouri opened up on the road, to my knowledge, was all the way back in the 03-04 campaign when the Tigers, barely won one over Oakland that season. That was a sign of, the Tigers were going to be a little bit disappointing this season. So I know I said, hey, we'll take a 1-point victory on the road in football in the SEC. That's not the case here tonight. If Missouri struggles with Howard, even the 1-point victory, as I like to say, that actually would be a sign that Missouri is probably not going to be as good as we had hoped. After seeing how the Tigers looked against Kansas State, however, I'm not really anticipating that. Definitely going to be looking to see how Mark Mitchell looks tonight. Hopefully he's going to play. I assume he will. Definitely took kind of a hard spill in the Kansas State game and didn't really play much or at all after that that I noticed. So I'll be keeping an eye on Mark Mitchell and his status. Seems like he should be okay going forward here. Also, hey, Honor Boateng. I talked him up a lot following the exhibition game against Kansas State. This is going to be really lower competition. I'd like to see Boateng, again, use that big athletic body of his to punish smaller players driving to the basket, and obviously hopefully can continue to knock down some shots too. Also going to just be curious if Missouri's defensive structure looks a little bit different this season. Are they still going to be gambling and trapping as much as they have in recent years? As I've said before, I think with such a long athletic team, I think Missouri can basically pack the paint a little bit more and gamble less often, make the opposition score one-on-one. That's just more how I would look at things. By the way, just some quick trivia here. Howard, not exactly a huge basketball tradition at Howard, but a heck of a lot of notable names have gone to Howard over the years, including former Vice President Kamala Harris. You got Chadwick Boseman, the actor. You got, Sean Puffy Combs. They might want to take that one off the board. But Taraji P. Henson, Marlon Wayans, lots of celebs out there. But you also got Thurgood Marshall, a former American civil rights attorney. Was he a Supreme Court justice? He was, right? Yeah. He was the Supreme Court justice, first African American justice. I knew it. You get nothing past me. You even got Toni Morrison, and if you got mad at me for bringing up Kamala Harris, well, how about the other side of the aisle? You got economist Thomas Sowell as well. So a lot of huge names there of Howard alumni, without a doubt. But hopefully a win for Missouri basketball coming up here tonight. And by the way, a loss, at least on the high school recruiting ranks, for Mizzou basketball this weekend. So let's talk about that. But also a win for Eli Drinkwitz as he flipped a cornerback from BYU. So let's get into all of that here coming up in just a second. But first, of course, the NBA season is here, and there's no better place to get in on all the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything for who is going to score next to a fourth quarter comebacks. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. In this offseason, I've talked a lot about how Link Academy in Branson has become really the high school basketball recruiting center of the Midwest in a lot of ways. And indeed, you look at the Missouri high school recruiting rankings for 2026, just specifically in the state of Missouri. Well, according to 24/7 Sports, Link Academy has 6 of the top 7 players in the state. That's pretty incredible to have on one team. Well, none of these players, interestingly enough, are committed to the University of Missouri, and that includes Tristan Reed. And this is somewhat surprising, but also nothing to really panic about whatsoever. Like I said, Missouri on this current roster has plenty of local kids without a doubt, and you look at Missouri's 26 recruiting class, well, those first 3 guys have it among the best classes in the entire country right now. Of course, Jason Crow Jr. is one of the absolute elite players in the country. I think he'll be in the Missouri starting 5 the second he steps onto campus. Then you've got Tony Bryant, a really athletic forward with just tremendous upside. And finally, Aiden Chronister from the state of Kansas, who's just one heck of a shooter on the wing for Missouri. So the conventional wisdom is with Tristan Reed, who, by the way, committed to Mississippi State on Saturday. Now that that's out of the way, I think that's the conventional wisdom says that that's probably it for Missouri. There's not going to be a backup plan in high school here. They'll just leave that spot that they were saving for Tristan Reed and probably roll it over into the transfer portal next season. So nothing really to worry about there whatsoever. A somewhat disappointing, if at this point, not a real surprising development if you follow high school recruiting closely. I think Reed had been trending away from Missouri for a while now. So a slight disappointment, but again, you take a step back and you go, oh wait, Missouri's still with certainly a top 5 type high school class in the country coming in for next season, headlined by Jason Crow Jr. Nothing really worry about there whatsoever. Also, on the football side, another flip for Missouri and their high school recruiting. Jackson Gates flips from BYU, a 6'1" corner from Laverne, California. 6'1" corner out of high school. I guess he's not 6'3", 6'4", but my goodness, these defensive backs just keep growing, don't they? And by the way, another thing that keeps growing to me is my confusion that defensive players are allowed to throw punches legally on the field. I understand the point here, and it's a legitimate play in that, hey, I'm trying to punch the ball out of the guy's hands, but just the nature of being able to close your fist and legally throw it at another player who has the ball has seemed really bizarre to me. I've always just thought, okay, I get it. He's trying to punch out the ball, but what if he misses? What if he misses and punches the guy in the crotch or something like that? That's just, hey, come see, come saw, no harm, no foul, except, oh, wait, his testicles may be having quite a bit of harm right now. And I saw this, I've thought this for a long time. I don't know if I've ever brought it up on the show, but probably the best example I've seen of it in the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. There was a player that punched the ball out in that ball game. Well, as he threw the punch, the fist grazed the guy's face mask before he knocked the ball out. So I just find it really bizarre and sort of, I don't know if hypocritical is the right word. Certainly inconsistent is probably a better word selection there. But how is it that a player on any other circumstance, you ball up your fist and you hit a guy in the face mask? Well, that's an immediate ejection. But somehow, well, if I'm trying to punch the ball and I hit you in the face, what are you going to do? It's just part of the game, I suppose. I've always found that to be a little bit bizarre. But regardless, going to be talking to you tomorrow on Tuesday's edition of Locked On Mizzou, of course, about whatever happens in this Missouri-Howard basketball game tonight, and also going to gear up for Mizzou and Texas A&M on Saturday as well. So until then, I am John Miller. Thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.